The sound of a slap cracked through Manhattan's most expensive boutique. A 68-year-old woman stumbled onto the marble floor, her lips splitting open, blood trailing down her chin as a luxury watch skittered across the polished tile. Customers froze, shocked into silence. Phones shot upward, screens glowing like fireflies. Within moments, more than 15,000 strangers across the internet were watching a live stream of the scene. A store manager towering over an elderly woman he had just accused of being a thief. He didn't know it yet, but the woman bleeding before him wasn't just another customer. She was about to shatter his career, his company, and his entire sense of reality. 15 minutes earlier, Premier Luxury Boutique, Fifth Avenue, Manhattan. The building itself was a temple of excess, walls of glass reflecting the morning sun, brass handles polished so brightly they blinded, and a doorman in a black suit greeting every patron with a nod, rehearsed 1,000 times. Inside, the world felt curated, every detail calculated to whisper, "You belong here, if you can pay the price." The marble floor was so glossy it mirrored the chandeliers above. Perfume lingered in the air, subtle but expensive. Soft classical music played on a sound system hidden in the ceiling, tuned low enough to soothe but never distract. At 10:15 p.m., Evelyn Carter walked through the revolving glass door. She did not look like Premier's target customer. Her navy cardigan had been worn for years, sleeves a little frayed at the edges. Her shoes were plain flats, scuffed near the toes. A simple gold band on her left hand was the only jewelry she wore. The only thing about her that spoke of wealth was her posture, not stiff but quietly assured, like someone who'd walked through much larger rooms than this one. A sales associate at the scarf display glanced up, her smile flickering before she looked away. Evelyn wasn't wearing designer sunglasses or a Rolex. She wasn't carrying a recognizable luxury handbag. To most of the staff, she looked like someone who might ask for directions, not buy a $3,400 Hermes. Evelyn strolled slowly, her hand brushing the edge of displays, pausing now and then as if studying art. When she reached the handbag section, she stopped at a cream-colored Hermes Birkin perched under a spotlight. She leaned closer, tracing a line along the stitching with the tip of her finger, eyes narrowing in thought. To anyone else, it looked like idle curiosity. But Evelyn was assessing. She had spent a lifetime examining quality of leather, of craftsmanship, of people. From the mezzanine above, Bradley Moore watched. He was in his mid-40s, sharp-jawed, salt and pepper hair clipped close. He liked being in control of the boutique's floor like a general surveying his troops. And he didn't like what he saw. Bradley had worked in luxury retail for nearly 20 years, long enough to form dangerous habits. He could size up customers in a single glance, or so he believed. The tailored suit, a buyer, the yoga pants with diamond studs, a browser. The cardigan with frayed sleeves, trouble. He came down the staircase with heavy, purposeful steps. A few shoppers noticed, curious why the manager himself was leaving his office to confront a woman who seemed harmless. "Ma'am," Bradley said, his voice cold, carrying across the boutique, "I think it's best you put that bag down." Evelyn looked up slowly, hands still resting lightly on the purse. "Excuse me?" His tone sharpened. "We don't allow loitering around the merchandise. People like you don't shop here. People like you steal." The words landed with a thud. Every shopper within earshot stiffened. A teenage girl near the shoes gasped softly. The boutique's classical soundtrack seemed to fade, the violin strangled by the silence that followed. Evelyn blinked once. Her voice, when it came, was calm. "That's quite an assumption." Bradley stepped closer. "It's not an assumption. It's experience. I can spot a shoplifter before they even make a move. You don't belong in here." The disgust in his tone hung in the air. A few customers exchanged nervous glances. Some nodded in agreement. The kind of people who believed money could be read like an aura. Bradley's jaw tightened. Without warning, he raised his hand. The crack of his palm, striking her cheek, rang like a gunshot. Evelyn staggered back, her shoulder catching a glass shelf. A crystal ornament wobbled, clinking before it steadied. She collapsed onto the marble floor, her belongings spilling like secrets. A slim leather wallet, a folded boarding pass, a phone buzzing with an incoming call. Bradley's voice thundered over her. "Worthless old thief!" He kicked her wristwatch, a slim Patek Philippe, sending it skittering across the floor until it struck the base of a mannequin stand. Shoppers gasped, torn between fear and fascination. One woman clutched her pearls, whispering loudly enough for others to hear. "I knew she didn't belong. They should check her bag." From across the boutique, Lily Brooks, 17, had been live streaming a makeup tutorial for her modest Instagram audience. The moment she heard the slap, she spun her phone, capturing Evelyn on the ground, blood blooming from her lip. Her breathless commentary carried across cyberspace. "Oh my God, you guys, the manager just hit an old lady. This is insane, premier luxury, Fifth Avenue. This is actually happening." Her viewer count leapt from 12 to 200 in under a minute, then 1,000, then 2. Meanwhile, Evelyn steadied herself, pressing 2 fingers to her lip, crimson smeared against pale skin. She stared at the blood for a moment, then at Bradley, her gaze unshaken. When she spoke, her words carried the eerie composure of someone used to playing the long game. "Are you absolutely certain about this decision?" she asked quietly. "Have you ever watched someone burn their entire world to the ground in a single act of hatred?" The words unsettled even those who had been ready to believe Bradley. They didn't sound like the protest of a cornered thief. They sounded like a warning. Bradley folded his arms, puffing his chest. "You all saw it," he announced to the boutique. "She was acting suspicious, trying to steal. These people always think they can get away with it." "Them people," muttered someone near the door, echoing his prejudice like a reflex. The comments on Lily's live stream exploded. "Call the cops. She's bleeding. This is racist. Premier luxury assault." Her viewer count jumped past 3,000, climbing so fast her phone lagged. Evelyn bent with slow precision, gathering her scattered belongings. She picked up the folded boarding pass first. Gold lettering along the top read, "First class, private jet service." She slid it into her pocket without comment. Her hand closed around the black glint of a card under a scarf. American Express Centurion. Heavy, obsidian, undeniable. Before she could tuck it away, Karen Dalton, the assistant manager, swooped in, heels clacking. She snatched the card from Evelyn's fingers with a theatrical gasp. "Oh, please," she sneered. "Like you could ever afford this. It's probably stolen too." Her laughter cut through the boutique, high and sharp. Customers shifted uncomfortably, but no one intervened. On Lily's live stream, comments went berserk. "OMG, she stole her card. Get the police. This is disgusting." The number on screen passed 9,000, and then Evelyn, without raising her voice, tapped her phone. She pressed speaker. A crisp professional voice filled the boutique. "Mrs. Carter, this is Goldman Sachs Private Banking. We're waiting for you in the boardroom. The helicopter is fueled and ready on the pad. Are you still en route?" Every head turned. Silence fell so thick it pressed against the glass walls. Bradley's smirk faltered. The timing was too sharp, too surreal. But denial was safer than truth. "She's bluffing," he muttered. "Old women make up stories when they're caught." Evelyn's lip bled, but her voice came clear as crystal. "I'm experiencing some difficulty with your local management team. They seem to believe I'm here to steal, not to invest." A businessman near the entrance lowered his Wall Street Journal. His eyes widened. He pulled out his phone and began recording, instincts screaming that this moment would matter. Karen's fingers clenched the Centurion card so tightly her knuckles whitened. For the first time, she looked unsure. From the back, the store director, Melissa Crane, burst onto the floor, her heels clicking like bullets. She stopped dead. In front of her, Evelyn on the floor, lip bleeding, belongings scattered. Bradley standing over her, customers with phones raised, and a teenager's live stream already tallying 15,000 viewers. Melissa's pulse hammered. She knew what this meant. Scandals like this didn't simmer. They exploded. "What happened here?" she demanded, though dread already coiled in her stomach. Bradley's answer came too fast. "She was trying to steal. I caught her." She resisted. "I had to use force." But his certainty had drained away, his voice cracking around the edges. Melissa's gaze flicked to Lily's phone screen. Live, 15.6K viewers. She went pale. Corporate careers had ended over less. And then Evelyn Carter rose, dusting off her cardigan, blood still glistening on her lip. Her eyes locked on Melissa's. Her voice cut the air clean in half. "Your manager accused me of theft. He struck me across the face. He kicked my belongings across your floor. Which part of that confuses you?" The boutique fell into a silence so complete it rang louder than the slap. The businessman near the door stepped forward, phone camera raised. "I'm Robert Brooks," he said firmly. "Financial analyst at Morgan Stanley. I watched everything. Your employee committed assault on camera, in front of more than 16,000 live witnesses." The number ticked upward. 17, 18, 19. Bradley's jaw clenched, but his face had gone pale. The certainty he'd worn like armor was cracking fast. And Evelyn Carter, voice calm as judgment, said softly, "Perhaps it's time I explain who I am. Perhaps it's time I explain who I am." Evelyn Carter's words sliced through the boutique like a blade. Her swollen lip bled, but her posture radiated an unsettling calm. Around her, the crowd held its collective breath. Phones hovered in the air like a constellation of judgment. Every lens aimed at the woman on the marble floor and the man who had struck her. The live stream counter in the corner of Lily Brooks's phone climbed. 19,000, 21, 23. Comments flew in by the hundreds every second. "She's not a thief. She's a buzzies. Manager is done. Get the police in here." Bradley Moore shifted uncomfortably, the arrogance he'd warned moments earlier already fraying. "Don't listen to her," he muttered, too loudly. "She's making this up. People like her always." He cut himself off, realizing too late that every syllable was being recorded. Evelyn stooped gracefully, picking up the last of her scattered belongings. A leather portfolio, its clasp dented from the fall, hung in her hand. She snapped it open with quiet precision, revealing neatly stacked documents, embossed with the seal of Washington and Carter Holdings. Few in the boutique understood what they were looking at, but the businessman, Robert Brooks, knew immediately. His jaw tightened. These weren't the props of a scammer. These were the tools of someone who moved billions. "Mrs. Carter," said the voice still echoing from her phone speaker. "Jennifer Walsh, private banking liaison at Goldman Sachs. Shall I inform the board you'll be delayed?" Evelyn glanced at Bradley, then Karen Dalton, still clutching her Centurion card like a talisman. "Not yet," she replied, her words amplified by the phone. "I'm still gathering information about this establishment's customer service standards." A nervous laugh rippled through the boutique, thin and brittle. Bradley's ears burned crimson. He opened his mouth, but Robert Brooks cut across him with practiced authority. "Sir, every second you speak is another second of evidence. I'd advise silence." Melissa Crane, the store director, felt her knees weakening. Her mind replayed the email from headquarters that morning. "VIP investor, visit scheduled today. Treat with utmost respect." She hadn't connected the dots. Now the truth loomed like a tidal wave. "Melissa," Evelyn said, turning toward her with uncanny calm, "your employee accused me of theft. He struck me across the face. Your assistant manager seized my personal credit card. Do you intend to defend this behavior?" Melissa swallowed hard. Cameras zoomed in. Customers leaned closer. "Mrs. Carter, I deeply apologize for any misunderstanding. I assure you this is not reflective of Premier Luxury's values." "Misunderstanding," Evelyn's voice sharpened. "A misunderstanding is misplacing an item. This was violence. This was prejudice. Which one of those is unclear? The words dropped like lead. The middle-aged woman who had muttered about checking her bag shrank back, realizing her face was in half a dozen phone cameras. She clutched her pearls tighter, but said nothing. Suddenly, the boutique doors opened. Two NYPD officers entered. Sergeant Martinez, seasoned and steady, and Patrolman Rodriguez, younger but equally alert. Their eyes swept the scene in seconds. The woman with a bloody lip, the manager flushed and rigid, 20 customers with phones raised. A teenager's live stream still counting up. 28,000 now. We received multiple calls about an assault in progress, Martinez announced, voice carrying decades of authority. Who's the victim? I am, Evelyn said simply. She stepped forward, her swollen cheek a vivid testament. This man, she pointed at Bradley, struck me across the face approximately 15 minutes ago. The incident is currently broadcasting live to over 30,000 viewers. She gestured toward Lily's phone, which trembled in the girl's hand. Bradley sputtered. It wasn't like that. She was suspicious. She looked like she was going to... Martinez's eyes narrowed. Suspicious of what? Examining merchandise in a store? Sir, I'll need your identification. Karen rushed in, her voice shrill with panic. She was shoplifting. We had every right to stop her. Martinez didn't flinch. Ma'am, assault is not justified by suspicion of shoplifting, and seizing someone's credit card is theft. I strongly recommend you stop talking. The live stream comments exploded. Yes, cops, lock him up. Racist Karen spotted. Get their names. Evelyn raised her phone again. The line hadn't disconnected. A new voice entered, deep, commanding, unmistakably powerful. Evelyn, it's Charles Hendricks. I'm watching the stream with the board. Are you injured? Melissa Crane's stomach dropped into her shoes. Hendricks, the CEO of Lux Retail Group, the man whose name was whispered like a prayer at corporate headquarters. I'm fine, Charles, Evelyn replied, her tone steady, deliberate. But your Manhattan flagship has provided me with quite an education in corporate culture. Hendricks's voice thundered through the boutique. Stay exactly where you are. I'm inbound by helicopter. We will handle this immediately. The call ended. Silence clung to the marble. Bradley's complexion turned ashen. Karen looked like she might faint. Melissa closed her eyes, already imagining her career dissolving. Evelyn Carter tucked her phone away with surgical calm, then turned back to the officers. Gentlemen, perhaps it's time we add some context. She lifted the leather portfolio, flipping open the top document. Washington and Carter Holdings currently owns 67% of Lux Retail Group, parent company of Premier Luxury. Her voice, though quiet, carried the weight of absolute authority. By extension, I own this store. The boutique erupted, gasps, shouts, phones tilting wildly as viewers scrambled to process. Lily's viewer count hit 40,000. Bradley staggered back a step. You're lying. Evelyn smiled, though blood still streaked her lip. Was lying what you saw when you struck me across the face? Or when you kicked my watch? Or when your assistant stole my card? Because, Mr. Moore, those actions are recorded. And truth, she paused, isn't optional anymore. Robert Brooks lowered his phone, shaking his head in disbelief. Holy hell, he muttered. She owns the entire chain. Karen's hand finally released the Centurion card. It clattered against marble, loud as a gunshot. Melissa Crane whispered, almost to herself. VIP investor visit. Oh my God! Sergeant Martinez straightened. Ma'am, would you like to press charges? Evelyn studied Bradley, whose face had drained of all color, sweat trickling down his temple. Around them, cameras captured every twitch, every breath. 30 seconds of silence stretched like an eternity. Yes, Evelyn said finally. I absolutely would. Martinez nodded. Sir, you're under arrest for assault in the 3rd degree. The click of handcuffs closed around Bradley's wrists. Customers gasped. Some cheered softly. Others whispered frantically. The live stream exploded with comments. Justice! He's done, yeah. She owns the place. History being made. As Bradley was led toward the door, Evelyn turned back to the boutique. Her voice was calm, almost serene. Actions have consequences, and now the real consequences begin. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the boutique like a verdict. Bradley Moore's broad shoulders sagged as Sergeant Martinez tightened the chain, reading him his rights with practiced precision. Phones captured every syllable, every twitch in his gait, every beat of sweat breaking across his temple. For a man who once commanded this floor with arrogance, the fall was brutal and swift. Evelyn Carter watched in silence, her swollen cheek glowing crimson under the boutique lights. Then she bent, picked up her leather portfolio, and opened it with deliberate calm. The sound of the clasp snapping back cut through the whispers like a gunshot. Before this goes any further, she began, her voice steady, commanding, carrying the tone of someone who'd spent decades in boardrooms. I should provide some context. None of what has happened here is an accident. It was a test. Her words sliced the air. The crowd leaned in. Even the officers paused, intrigued. Evelyn pulled out a set of documents embossed with the seal of Washington and Carter Holdings. For the last 3 years, my company has been increasing its equity stake in Lux Retail Group. As of last quarter, we hold 67% of its shares. By extension, I own this store, and 46 others like it across the country. The boutique erupted with gasps, phones tilted, capturing the moment. Lily Brooks's live stream shot past 60,000 viewers. The comment feed scrolling too fast to read. She owns the company. Racism caught on camera. Billionaire sting operation. This is unreal. Melissa Crane staggered back a step, her hand flying to her mouth. You own Premier Luxury? I did, Evelyn corrected softly, her eyes narrowing. Past tense. Bradley twisted in his cuffs. This is insane, he muttered, his voice cracking. You planned this? You dressed like that on purpose? Evelyn's smile was thin, razor sharp. I did. Every year, Washington and Carter Holdings conducts unannounced evaluations of our investments. We call it mystery shopping. We enter stores in disguise, presenting ourselves as customers who may not appear wealthy. We test not your ability to sell handbags or perfume, but your ability to respect basic human dignity. Her words landed like bombs. Shoppers turned to one another, whispering furiously. Employees shrank behind counters, faces pale. Karen Dalton looked like she might collapse, her hands trembling as she wiped sweat from her brow. This morning, Evelyn continued, I presented myself in modest clothing, comfortable shoes, nothing to suggest wealth. I examined merchandise carefully. I waited to see how I would be treated. And you, Mr. Moore, she gestured toward Bradley in handcuffs. You revealed the culture of this company in a single act of violence. Robert Brooks lowered his phone slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. My God, he murmured. She wasn't just a mystery shopper. She's the majority shareholder. Karen Dalton finally broke. Her voice rose in panic, shrill and desperate. This isn't fair. You tricked us. You dressed like some nobody just to catch us slipping. Evelyn turned, her gaze locking on Karen like a predator on prey. And what did my clothing excuse? Ms. Dalton? The theft of my credit card? The laughter? The assumption that no woman like me could possibly afford to be here? Tell me, what exactly did I force you to do? Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came. Dozens of phone cameras captured her humiliation in high definition. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice lowering but carrying even more weight. Respect should not depend on a price tag. Dignity is not conditional. Yet you made it conditional. And now the world is watching. Melissa Crane's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She didn't need to look. Headquarters, PR, legal, all of them. But she was frozen, caught between a billionaire's judgment and an audience of 60,000 witnesses. Suddenly, the thrum of helicopter blades reverberated through the boutique's skylights. The chandelier above trembled. Shoppers tilted their phones upward, catching the shadow of a sleek black helicopter settling onto the rooftop pad. "He's here," Evelyn said quietly, almost to herself. The stairwell door burst open. Charles Hendricks, CEO of Lux Retail Group, stormed into the boutique like a storm in a tailored suit. Silver-haired, 6'2". His presence filled the space before he even spoke. Behind him, Evelyn's assistant Jennifer Walsh trailed with a tablet in hand, market data flashing on the screen. Hendricks's eyes swept the room in seconds. The handcuffed manager, the bloodied woman, the officers, the phones. He exhaled once. Tightly controlled fury. "Evelyn, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Charles," she said, her tone calm. "Though your employees have given me quite the case study." Hendricks turned to Sergeant Martinez. "What charges are being filed?" "Assault in the third degree," Martinez replied. "Potential theft charges against the assistant manager for seizing the victim's credit card." Hendricks's jaw clenched. He turned on Karen Dalton, who shrank behind the counter. "You took her card?" I thought it was stolen." Karen stammered. "You thought a 68-year-old woman had stolen an American Express Centurion?" His voice carried the precision of a cross-examination. "Do you have any idea what kind of net worth that card requires? What invitation only means?" Karen's eyes filled with tears. She had no answer. Evelyn stepped forward, her gaze sweeping the boutique, landing on every trembling employee. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time we stop pretending this was a misunderstanding. This was not a lapse in judgment. This was systemic failure, captured in high definition, broadcast to over 70,000 people." Lily Brooks's hand shook as she angled her phone. 72, she whispered. "It just hit 72,000. Evelyn's voice grew sharper, rising above the sound of helicopter rotors winding down. "You all believe wealth wears designer shoes and diamond watches. You assume dignity comes with a receipt. But here's the truth. Dignity belongs to everyone. And when you fail to see that, when you treat human beings like thieves because of your prejudice," she touched the bruise blooming on her cheek, "this is the cost." The boutique was silent but for the relentless sound of the live stream comment feed buzzing in Lily's ear. Dorothy Washington vibes. She's legendary. This is history. Evelyn closed her portfolio with a decisive snap. "Mr. Hendricks, as majority shareholder, I will be issuing non-negotiable requirements for immediate reform." Every head turned to the CEO. Hendricks swallowed hard. He knew Evelyn Carter never bluffed. He had seen her dismantle billion-dollar firms with a flick of her pen. The helicopter outside was proof of her reach. The live stream inside was proof of her timing. The crowd waited, breathless. The officers paused mid-note. Melissa Crane felt her heart hammer against her ribs. And Evelyn, standing tall despite her bleeding lip, declared, "From this moment forward, premier luxury will change, or it will cease to exist." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. From this moment forward, premier luxury will change, or it will cease to exist. For a full 5 seconds, no one moved. Not the officers, not the customers, not the trembling staff. Even the sound of the helicopter blades above seemed to fade. Only the numbers on Lily Brooks' phone kept climbing. 75,000, 78, 81. The entire world was piling into the boutique through a teenage live stream. Charles Hendricks adjusted his tie, though his face betrayed the cracks in his composure. He had stared down hostile investors, activist shareholders, even Wall Street regulators, but never a situation like this. A bloody-lipped billionaire majority owner, a handcuffed store manager, thousands of cameras, and nearly 100,000 strangers demanding answers in real time. "Evelyn," he began carefully, his voice smooth but strained, We all recognize the seriousness of what's happened, but perhaps we can resolve this privately. No, Evelyn cut him off, her tone sharp as glass. Privately is how you bury problems. This will be resolved publicly, with accountability. Lily's phone buzzed as comments scrolled too fast to read. She's incredible. No excuses. Public apology now. Fire them all. Evelyn stepped closer, her portfolio in hand like a weapon. Here are my non-negotiable requirements. And Charles, listen carefully. If you refuse, Washington and Carter Holdings will recall $340 million of Lux Retail Group's debt within 72 hours. Bankruptcy will follow before the weekends. The crowd gasped. Melissa Crane felt her knees buckle. Robert Brooks's eyes widened. He knew she wasn't bluffing. Hendricks exhaled slowly. All right, he said, voice taut. What are your terms? Evelyn lifted one finger. First, the immediate termination of Marcus Moore, Karen Dalton, and Melissa Crane. No severance, no positive references. Their careers in luxury retail end today. Melissa's breath hitched. Please, she whispered, but Evelyn silenced her with a glance colder than ice. Second, Evelyn continued, a public corporate apology acknowledging systemic racism, not some vague press release about misunderstandings. You will say the words, our employees assaulted Mrs. Carter, and we accept full responsibility. The boutique trembled with the weight of her demand. Hendricks's jaw tightened. He knew legal would have heart attacks, but denial was no longer an option. Third, she pressed on, mandatory bias awareness training for all employees, quarterly refreshers, annual certification, fail to pass, lose your job. Phones tilted closer, catching every syllable. The live stream counter passed 88,000. Fourth, Evelyn said, installation of monitoring systems across all 47 premier luxury stores. Artificial intelligence will flag discriminatory language, microaggressions, and bias patterns. Independent audits will review every flagged incident. Karen Dalton's legs gave out. She sank onto a chair, face buried in her hands. Fifth, Evelyn's voice grew colder. Diverse hiring mandates. 40% minority representation in management within 18 months. Monthly reports delivered directly to Washington and Carter Holdings. Hendricks's lips pressed into a hard line. The cost of recruiting, training, compliance, it would be astronomical. But Evelyn wasn't done. Sixth, she declared, a customer dignity fund, $5 million annually, distributed to civil rights organizations addressing retail discrimination, managed independently, reported publicly. The crowd murmured. Even the officers looked impressed. And seventh, Evelyn paused, letting the silence stretch. Bradley Moore groaned from behind his cuffs, sensing what was coming. Personal restitution, $50,000 from Mr. Moore, $25,000 each from Miss Dalton and Miss Crane. Not the corporation, personal funds. Actions have consequences, and you will bear them directly. Gasps rippled through the boutique. Melissa Crane swayed on her feet. Karen whimpered. Bradley cursed under his breath. Evelyn straightened, her gaze locking on Hendricks. Those are my terms. Comply fully, and premier luxury continues under my ownership. Refuse, and by this time tomorrow, Lux Retail Group will be in freefall. Investors, employees, shareholders, they'll all pay the price for your cowardice. The silence that followed felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Phones captured every twitch of Hendricks's face. Lily's live stream surged past 93,000 viewers. Rodriguez, the younger officer, broke the silence. Ma'am, forgive me for asking, but what happens if they compete? Evelyn's eyes softened slightly. If they comply, justice begins. Employees who treat customers with dignity keep their jobs. Shareholders retain their investments. And the industry learns that hatred has consequences. Bradley Moore, sweat dripping, snapped. You're destroying people's livelihoods because I made one mistake. Evelyn turned her bruised face toward him. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried to every corner of the boutique. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, and now you live with it. The weight of her words crushed the room. Above them, the helicopter's blades spun down to silence. Outside, news vans lined Fifth Avenue. Reporters had already setting up cameras. The world was waiting for Hendrix's answer. He looked around the boutique, at Evelyn, blood still drying on her lip, at his employees crumbling under judgment, at the officers, neutral but firm, at the customers, recording history. He thought of the boardroom, the shareholders, the stock price tumbling by the minute, and he knew. Full compliance, he said quietly. Defeated. Phones captured the moment the CEO surrendered. The live stream count hit 97,000. Evelyn Carter closed her portfolio, nodding once. Excellent choice. She turned toward Lily's phone, her swollen cheeks stark in the boutique lights. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, addressing the audience directly, today you witnessed more than an assault. You witnessed accountability. Change doesn't come from excuses. It comes from refusing to accept hatred as normal. Demand better. Demand dignity. Because if one store can change, so can an entire industry. The comments exploded. Legend. Icon. Evelyn Carter just changed retail forever. Evelyn slid her phone into her pocket, collected her belongings, and walked toward the boutique doors with calm authority. Behind her, 3 ruined careers lay in pieces. Ahead of her, the seeds of revolution had already been planted. 6 hours after Evelyn Carter walked out of premier luxury boutique, the story had consumed the city. By sundown, her swollen cheek was on every major network. CNN called it the slap that shook Fifth Avenue. Fox News branded it billionaire mystery shopper exposes retail racism. MSNBC went with justice in real time. Clips of Bradley Moore's open-handed strike replayed endlessly across TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. Hashtags exploded. Judge premier assault. Hashtag Evelyn Carter. Hashtag accountability now. What began as a teenager's live stream had become the lead story of the nation. Bradley Moore sat in a holding cell at Manhattan Central Booking, his mugshot already plastered beside freeze frames of the slap. The contrast was devastating. Him in orange, eyes sunken with fear. Against Evelyn's dignified composure despite her injury, his wife refused his calls. His children ignored his messages. Overnight, the man who once strutted through marble aisles had become a pariah. Karen Dalton fared little better. Under police supervision, she packed her belongings into a cardboard box, escorted out of the boutique by security guards. Customers outside jeered, phones recording her shame, headlines mocked, Karen meets karma. Her 20-year career in luxury retail ended in one afternoon. Worse, her refusal to return Evelyn's Centurion card meant prosecutors had real evidence of theft. Melissa Crane spent the evening in her corporate apartment, phone buzzing nonstop with messages from attorneys, journalists, and family. Her termination letter arrived electronically at 11:42 p.m., citing gross negligence, complicity in discrimination, and catastrophic reputational damage. She sat at her kitchen counter, staring at the email until dawn, knowing her career was over. Meanwhile, at Lux Retail Group headquarters, panic reigned. An emergency board meeting stretched late into the night. Lawyers, PR experts, and financial analysts filled a mahogany-paneled room, screens flashing with live coverage of the scandal. Charles Hendrix stood at the head of the table, face drawn, voice grave. Gentlemen, he said, we have 2 choices. Comply with Evelyn Carter's terms completely, or cease to exist by Thursday. Patricia Collins, a board member, shuffled papers nervously. Her demands will cost us $47 million in the first year alone. Bankruptcy will cost us $2 billion, Hendricks snapped. She's not bluffing. She's been buying our debt for years. She owns us. The vote was unanimous, full compliance. At 9 p.m. Eastern, Hendricks appeared on live television, framed by the Lux Retail Group logo. He looked smaller than usual, diminished by humility. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I am here to address the inexcusable assault of Mrs. Evelyn Carter at our Fifth Avenue location. What happened was not an isolated incident. It was the result of systemic failures in leadership, training, and culture. We failed Mrs. Carter. We failed our customers. We failed our own values." The teleprompter scrolled. "Effective immediately, Lux Retail Group is implementing the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in retail history. From this day forward, the Evelyn Carter Protocol will define how we serve our customers and how we train our employees." Across the country, living rooms erupted in discussion. Some cheered, some scoffed, but no one could ignore it. Evelyn Carter had forced an industry giant to bend. Within 72 hours, Microsoft's retail monitoring teams installed AI systems in all 47 premier luxury stores. Every conversation, every transaction, every gesture would now be recorded and analyzed for bias. Quarterly training modules rolled out to employees with mandatory tests. Fail and you were gone. By the end of the month, minority managers were being hired in droves, lured by generous signing bonuses. Civil rights groups received their first $5 million disbursement from the newly established Customer Dignity Fund. The industry had never seen anything like it. And Evelyn? She stayed quiet, watching the reforms take root from her office overlooking Central Park. 30 days later, Bradley Moore appeared in Manhattan criminal court for sentencing. The courtroom overflowed with reporters, cameras flashing like fireworks. Judge Maria Santos peered down from the bench, eyes sharp behind her glasses. "Mr. Moore," she said, voice cold as stone, "your actions represent more than simple assault. You struck not just Mrs. Carter, but the principles of dignity and equality that underpin our society. You assumed her worth was measured by her clothing, not her humanity, and now you face the consequences." Bradley stared at the table, unable to meet her gaze. 6 months in Rikers Island, the judge pronounced, followed by 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service with civil rights organizations. Additionally, you are permanently barred from holding any customer service role in the state of New York. The gavel fell. The sound was final. Bradley was led away in shackles, his once proud stride reduced to a shuffle. Karen Dalton wept as her own sentence was read. 90 days in county jail. Restitution of $25,000. Melissa Crane, spared jail but not ruin, received probation, community service, and a matching restitution fine. She sold her Manhattan condo within weeks, her career in ashes. 6 months later, Evelyn returned to the boutique where it all began. The storefront gleamed with fresh paint, new signage, and a redesigned interior. Protesters had gathered outside, not against her, but for her. Signs read, "Dignity for all." "Thank you, Evelyn." Inside, staff stood straighter, uniforms crisp, faces a reflection of the city's diversity. Behind the counter stood the new store manager, Keisha Thompson, a 34-year-old black woman with an MBA from Wharton. She stepped forward, smiling warmly. "Mrs. Carter, welcome back to Premier Luxury. How may we serve you today?" Evelyn's eyes fell on the same cream-colored Hermes bag. The irony was sharp enough to sting. She lifted it gently, turned it over in her hands, and said, "I'll take this one." Keisha processed the transaction with grace, never once doubting, never once assuming. "Would you like this gift wrapped, Miss Carter?" she asked. "No," Evelyn said softly. "I'll keep it just as it is." And the bag became a symbol, not of wealth, but of change purchased through pain. 9 months later, the Evelyn Carter Foundation had distributed $15 million to civil rights organizations. Reports showed bias-related incidents in retail had dropped 67% across Lux stores. Competitors scrambled to adopt similar reforms, fearing their own viral disasters. Nordstrom announced bias training. Saks issued diversity hiring mandates. Even Walmart and Target followed suit, quietly but urgently. Business schools from Harvard to Wharton added the Carter case study to their curriculum, teaching future executives about ethics, accountability, and the cost of prejudice. Bradley Moore, released early for good behavior, worked construction on the outskirts of Queens. His name had become shorthand for failure. Lecturers invoked him as a cautionary tale. He wrote Evelyn a letter of apology, but she never responded. Karen Dalton managed to own a small boutique in New Jersey, her dreams of luxury retail gone forever. Melissa Crane relocated to Oregon, directing a nonprofit that provided housing for the homeless. Perhaps that was justice, too. And Evelyn? She kept the Hermes bag in her office, displayed on a shelf beside awards and family photographs. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that one act of cruelty had reshaped an entire industry. Her philosophy remained simple, printed on the wall behind her desk in bold letters. Dignity isn't negotiable. Respect isn't conditional. Change begins when we refuse to accept hatred as normal. A year to the day after the slap, Evelyn Carter sat in her corner office overlooking Central Park, sunlight spilling across her desk. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Premier Luxury reports record customer satisfaction. Employee retention up 43%. Diversity targets exceeded. Carter Protocol adopted industry-wide. She smiled faintly, touched the faint scar still visible on her cheek, and leaned back in her chair. One slap had changed the world of retail. One refusal to stay silent had rewritten the rules. And for thousands of employees, millions of customers, and an entire industry learning to see humanity before wealth, Evelyn Carter had proven a truth as old as justice itself. Hendong now kung kahokwa. Ngay ka với những người tin rằng họ bất khả xâm phạm.